Welcome back to Yaffee Live, Talk Radio 102.3. Right now we got to talk more Tennessee politics and news as well because Brandon Lewis is joining me. He is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. You can read that stuff, of course, every day, TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, how are you today, sir?
I'm great.
So you weren't on with us last week, and one of the reasons was you took a trip out to Washington, D.C., and I know you had a chance to speak with several lawmakers. Am I correct on that?
You are correct. I stopped in and did an interview with John Rose. It's on our website. You can see it. It's about 35 minutes long, or anywhere you get our social media channels, just talking about some fundamental issues that we know conservatives care about but have, for whatever reason, failed to be able to get any significant traction on. And so he was, fairly forthcoming in his answers and, probably provided a little bit of information for folks to make an informed decision. I know that the race is a long way out, but I also met with Marsha Blackburn and talked to her, of course, not about her race because she's not officially declared, and that's not allowed while you're up there in the Capitol grounds. But we did talk about some of the serious issues: illegal immigration, school choice, medical freedom, a few other things. And then I met with Desjardins and Fleischman and ran into Harshbarger and talked to her for a little while. So I made my rounds while I was up there, and then I went and did all the touristy stuff.
Yeah, and it looks like Marsha Blackburn is going to run for governor. John Rose, as you said, he's going to run as well. I'm guessing Blackburn is the front runner if she decides to run, right?
Well, anybody who, if you look at the polling, like just straight up polling, what little I can do, like on Twitter and other social media outlets. So there's who's declaring and who may run versus who would probably have the easiest time. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
But when you survey Tim Burchett up against anybody else in the state, like he really takes off with it. And so he's got a built-in appeal, but there's also rumors that he may or may not run for a Senate seat if vacated. Although Marsha wouldn't have to give up her seat when she runs because of the way the times are falling on 6 versus 4 years for governor. Like she doesn't stand to lose her Senate seat when she runs. And so we shall see, though. You never know what's going to happen until all the candidates are declared and the filing deadline is passed.
Yeah, I like Tim Burchett as well. So it'd be kind of interesting to see. Yeah, if Marsha Blackburn won the governor's race, then we would need a new senator. It would be interesting to see if he ran for that in the future. Speaking of polling, I know you guys have a poll out on your website dealing with Hamilton County, kind of surveying the results show that constituents strongly against taxpayer-funded education for illegals, which has been a big issue, and some other stuff as well.
Yeah, occasionally, Yaffee, I will ask myself this fundamental question: am I crazy? Am I crazy? When I talk about what conservatives want and then I see what our Republican leadership does, sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe they almost convince me that my view is radical. That's what the mainstream media does. That's what rhinos do. They convince you that your view is radical. But when you survey Hamilton County primary voters, GOP primary voters, and we pulled a list of 3 or 4, which is about 17,000 people. These are the most prolific voters in Hamilton County. And we surveyed 360 of them, or how many responded, which gives us more than a big enough sample to have a very small margin of error. And we asked if people in Hamilton County favored President Trump's policies on illegal immigrants in the first 100 days, and 71% said very favorable, 7.9 said somewhat favorable, somewhat unfavorable was 3.8, very unfavorable was 16. And then we went and asked, do you think Tennessee taxpayers should fund illegal immigrant education in Hamilton County? And 78.9% said no. 17.5% said yes, 3.6% were undecided. And then we asked this final question: if you knew a Republican elected official voted to support taxpayer-funded illegal immigrant education, would you still vote for them in the Republican primary? In which case, 58.9% said no, 18% said yes, and 23% were undecided. And what that tells me is if you pushed on that, more of those would probably fall in the no than the yes column, because people feel uncomfortable about this question. And so then it begs the question, right? we recently had a resolution passed by the Hamilton County Board of Education. Ben Daugherty, Larry Groen, Gary Kuhn, and Joe Smith all said, absolutely, we need to fund illegal immigrant education. They said it in the resolution by voting with the Democrats. And then we see that Felice Haddon, Jody Schaefer, Steve Slater chose to abstain from the vote. And so my question is, like, do these folks not have a mechanism to communicate with their constituents to determine how they want them to vote? Or do they think that being an elected official is just like, I'm going to go up there and vote my personal opinions regardless of the district? And so I paid money, I think it's like $1,700, $1,800 to have this poll ran just to make sure that I was really in line with what the voters want, and apparently I am.
Now, when you talk about what you said there, that they should represent their constituents, isn't one of the problems, though, that their constituents keep voting them in?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, people are very low information, right?
Yeah.
They're very low information. If you surveyed 1,000 people in Hamilton County and asked if they even know about the resolution that recently passed to support taxpayer-funded illegal immigrant education in Hamilton County, and that all the Republicans either voted for it or didn't vote against it, and the Democrats voted with them. I mean, people don't know that. But the beauty is, in an election, you can take that information to people if you have a candidate. And once the information is taken to people, it does take great expense and time to take that information, because people don't just go out and gather it themselves. But what this poll tells you basically is that if you went up to the door and you said candidate A had voted for this, the chance of them getting a vote from a voter in Hamilton County in the GOP primary is very low. But without someone educating those voters during the election, most of them will never know that their representatives are not in alignment with them on this issue.
Speaking with Brandon Lewis, he is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. You can always read his stuff at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. You know, on the issue of illegal immigration, we are seeing a little bit of a crackdown in Tennessee. Some members of Tren de Aragua were arrested. It was a joint effort by Tennessee Highway Patrol and ICE over in Nashville. Now, I think it's interesting that these gang members were arrested over there, because I thought, at least according to Democrats and many activists, that Tren de Aragua wasn't here, or they weren't really that big of a deal or something. But they do one effort and they arrest some members, on the first day. So what do you think about all this?
Well, according to what we know, because they haven't shared all the details, they went to a couple of apartment complexes and areas where there were a lot of ICE detainers issued, and this is the last known whereabouts of these folks. And then secondly, where there had been lots of gang activity. And they just did about 150 traffic stops for routine violations and picked up anywhere from 40 to 100 folks. And, of course, the pro-illegal immigrant lobby, which is very vocal, along with the Democrats, which is very vocal, they always shout down and drown out the silent majority, had a big, huge protest over it. And, Mayor Freddie O'Connor, who has one of the worst managed cities in the whole state, says that this federal enforcement action is not focused on making us safer and just leaves people in the community being fearful. I'm sure if you talk to Tim Kelly, he would say the exact same thing, that we don't need to be enforcing these immigration laws and that there's nothing negative happening in our communities, when in fact everybody knows there is. So hopefully we will see more and more of this. And I don't know if you even noticed, Yaffee, in the messaging from Homeland Security. I mean, they're very blunt. Like I even saw one here recently. It's about small business owners. You're not supposed to employ these folks. I've never seen anything like that from the federal government before. Or, go home. Self-deport now. Here's some money. Go home. Like I've never seen the government do that. And even messaging along with coordinated raids, like slowly but surely, I mean, that sends a message. And so hopefully if we can give some Republicans in Tennessee some courage to come behind the Trump administration to make some of these tough decisions, very difficult decisions, but decisions that are in line with the GOP electorate over the next year or so, we can see some real changes in Tennessee.
Yeah, I talked about it the other day, where Homeland Security responded to Freddie O'Connell's tweet on this and basically said, that means you're supporting gang members' criminal activity in your community. But you're right. you talk about the messaging working. It's already working. We're seeing the numbers at the border way down, encounters at the border way down, known gotaways way down. So that's kind of evidence that a lot of that is enforcement, but a lot of it is messaging as well, I think.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is it's almost like our house was flooded, and I've lived through a flooded house before. The first thing you got to do is cut the water off, right? You got to cut the water off. But once the water is cut off, there is tremendous amounts of remediation work, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of money, and it's very painful, and sometimes a lot of stuff has to be just completely ripped out and torn down to the studs and then built back up. And so I think that is one thing that people are not really noticing, that is when your country has been flooded, there will be, if you're truly going to clean the mess up, it is going to be ugly, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to be expensive. And we just simply in Tennessee, as far as I can tell here at the local level, we don't have enough folks that agree with that viewpoint, that have the backbone to stand up on these issues. And so hopefully that will change as the electorate makes it change in the primaries in 2026.
Yeah, and I know you've had your problems with Governor Bill Lee, even on the issue of immigration, but even he came out in support of what the Trump administration is doing. So it does show, it's having an effect on the state level.
It does. And, Lee is, he was non-committal on Bo Watson's bill to stop funding illegal immigrant education, which again, if you did this survey, Yaffee, all across the state, it would be even worse because the rural areas are going to be a little bit more conservative. Knoxville's going to be about like Chattanooga, as was Murfreesboro and parts of Nashville. But the rest of the state will be even more conservative than that. And so the thing that keeps baffling me, and this is what I talked to Marcia and John Rose about when I was up in D.C., it's like, how are we so disconnected? And I showed them this poll in Hamilton County. I said, how are we so disconnected as a party and as leaders, where our governor won't even commit to this, won't even commit to it, won't even say he supports it. And then our own, school board folks, we can't even get to support it. And so it's just this constant complaint and this confusion about where people stand on this issue and where our politicians are leading us.
Brandon Lewis, he is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. You can read about that poll, also his interview with John Rhodes, right there at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. That's TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Subscribe for free as well. Brandon, appreciate it. As always, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Yaffee. Take care.